Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Life is About More Than Living, a podcast. Um, tonight's episode is entitled, or tomorrow, whenever you're catching it, the episode will still be entitled, You're the One Holding the Pen, a conversation with Amanda Anderson. Uh, Briefly, she's been a keynote speaker, mental health strategist, and a whole bunch of other roles she's filled, which I'll let her share with you in a moment. I'm sure she wants to. What attracted me to her was one of the things in her website and elsewhere, but she said, "You don't rebuild from what broke you," which I often think I'm still doing. You rise because of it, and you build the damn empire anyway. Sounds like my wife. Um, so anyway, um, we can hit some bullet points. I hate outlining stuff for y'all. You know how I do. I keep it real natural. First of all, this is brought to you by my book, Split Souls in Transition, which was written out of my own personal journey and the journey of people I've known since 1979 through about 2021. So Split Souls in Transition, in-house sponsorship, Amazon, Spotify, where audio books are found. Support me by purchasing my book, Split Souls in Transition. Now, the ad is out the way. Amanda, whoo, I talk so easily off camera. This is your time. This is your story, however you want to tell it. And please share your location because sometimes I'm amazed that I get people all around the world in different time zones who are willing to be awake, but they probably should be asleep.
Yeah, well, hello everyone. I'm in Sydney, Australia. You can probably I do sound a little bit sick. I do apologize for that. But in Sydney at the moment, it is winter. So it's going around, unfortunately, but really glad to be here and really want to talk this through because it's interesting where you mentioned about rebuilding from the life that you're living and using the rubble to do that. I actually, as I've progressed through this journey, I've realized that it's not rebuilding, it's building. It's using what has happened to you in your life as the bricks to build a better, stronger, more aligned version of you or your life. And I think one of the things that obviously we're going to talk about today is my experience throughout my life has been quite insane in a way. I think a lot of people will have experiences throughout their life that tend to kind of follow a certain trajectory. So, for example, and, you know, I can't think of anything else at the moment, so I hope that I don't offend anybody. If you maybe have had an experience with, say, domestic violence in your life, usually, and I know that this is a generalization, but usually any future trauma that you have kind of still lies within the relationship field of category, if that makes sense. And so there are a lot of people who have had those experiences who are experts in domestic violence or experts within relationship category, and they can kind of work within that genre. I think the benefit that I have is that I have had quite a few different genres that have involved traumatic experiences. So I'm happy to talk about those, but I'm just reading the room as to whether you want me to sort of go into the
However
detail
you
of
want to
each of
go.
those.
I'm gonna tell every other guest, this is your time. This is your story. Someone out there will benefit from some aspect of your story.
Yeah.
What you choose to share, choose not to share is totally up to you. Now, if I was doing a more of a political leaning podcast like I did last night or a religious leaning podcast, biblical study podcast like I'm doing in September, then I will go a little bit deeper in that area because I've, as a layperson, have studied in those areas over 40 some years and lived some of that. But as far as this part goes, this is usually the area that I have to live with every single day. Some days I'm a better person or not a better person, aka the name of the podcast. Life is about more than living,
Mm,
aka my T-shirt. No matter what happens, I win. I speak the words. I fail to
but yeah,
live them at some of the most critical times. I need to live them. So having guests like such as Amanda on, it's also in a way therapeutic for me, um, because I get to interact with people who've been through some things, as we say in the South, been through some things.
okay. All right. Well, I'll give you the list of things that I've experienced, and then we
However you
can
want to
deep
go.
dive into any of those.
I'll sit back take
Because
a
I am
seat.
a, sorry, what was that?
I'm just sitting back taking a seat and just hear your
Yeah,
story.
you just chill because the list goes
Okay.
on. And I am happy to talk about almost all of them. Some of them are still occurring and involve other people, so I might just touch on those briefly, not necessarily go into the detail. But essentially, it started when I was 10 and my 17-year-old brother was killed.
Mm,
Um, he was, without going into, I mean, I'm happy to go into the detail, but if I'm going to give a list, I'll just give you a snippet. So he was 17, he went to a party, and on his way home, he was jumped and beaten and got a brain hemorrhage and died.
mm,
So that was sort of when the trauma started. I think I was 10. I may have been 7, around that 7 to 10 age. Then my sister was born, and she was born with a terminal illness, which is cystic
mm,
fibrosis.
mm,
So I grew up in a family that was grieving my brother and also then managing a terminally ill child who was also not meant to make it to the age of 10. So
mm,
that happened. Then throughout my life, I mean, this is not going to be in chronological order because there are too many things, but, throughout my life, I've had multiple family members pass away unexpectedly, as well as, older family members who pass because they're old. But my father also ended up getting leukemia and he passed away.
mm,
So there's 3 of them in the family that have passed. On top of that, I've had multiple miscarriages in trying to fall pregnant with the children that I am lucky enough to now have. Um, I have 2 children who are both neurodivergent, um, one of which also has personality um, issues behind that, which I think is somewhat common for children with the autism spectrum disorder. They tend to have, not only say ADHD and OCD, but they can also have other diagnoses. So there's that. On top of that, I had a stroke in
mm,
2018, which I was very lucky because I didn't have a major physical consequence. I had mostly cognitive issues. So I struggled to speak. I couldn't do word retrieval. And now that I've told you that, you might actually start to see little bits where I struggle to get the right words. Um, I had no memory whatsoever. I couldn't remember the names of my loved ones. Um, I would have meetings when I tried to continue to work. I would have meetings and then not remember that I even had the meeting. Um,
mm,
so I lost my job as a result, which I knew was going to happen, but it was nice that they tried to keep me on so that I could still maintain an income. Um, so then, before that, my boss committed suicide at a previous role,
mm,
and I'm now back at work working at L'Occitane, and we've recently had somebody else who has committed suicide. So I've dealt with 2 suicidal situations, both of which were my friends as well as my co-workers and boss. Um, my What else? I currently work as a mental health ambassador at L'Occitane, which means I'm the first port of call for crisis response as
Mm,
well. So I'm not sure if you heard about this in America, but there was a massive event at one of our biggest shopping centres in New South Wales, the Bondi Westfield stabbing, and a man who went on a rampage and killed multiple
mm-hmm,
people. And unfortunately, it all happened in front of our store. And
mm,
a baby was killed as well. And unfortunately, our staff witnessed that. So then,
mm.
obviously, have to deal with that.
So there's been so many
Um,
different levels of trauma right there
yeah,
in front of you and around you. Yeah.
that's
So
right.
I get it.
Sorry, what was
It's
that?
like it's like the old saying, you don't know what a person's been through until you hear their story. So your story is like, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the thing, and
But
what I don't, what I hate doing in these kind of instances is giving this sort of laundry list of trauma, because I think sometimes it's too much for people, and they also can think that I am sort of dismissing it by listing it off and saying, oh well, this happened and that happened, this happened and that happened, and I'm definitely not. There are, I'm fully aware of the impact of each of these things that I've been through and my
mhm,
family has been through. And as I said earlier, some of these things I am still going through currently. And it's a lot. Like, it is a lot. Um, and that's where I talk about sort of functional freeze. I think
mhm,
when people are going through, the way that I talk about it, there's three sort of phases to adversity, whether it be
mhm,
trauma or you're in a job and you've got imposter syndrome and you don't feel good enough. I mean, it doesn't,
mhm,
it can be this sort of big T or it can be little t, it doesn't matter.
mhm,
But there's three phases. One is the wound, and the
mhm,
wound is when it's really fresh and raw and it's just happened, and maybe you're still in shock, maybe you're bleeding on the outside or the inside. It's what I call that personal earthquake moment,
mhm,
where your world literally goes from before to after this moment.
mm,
Um, and then we go into the second phase, which is the scar phase, which is that functional freeze. It's where, maybe it's a couple of months down the track. Everyone's different. They all deal with things differently.
mhm,
But, it's when you still have to take the kids to school. You might be grieving or you might be going through something, but life still goes on around you. And because it still goes on around you, you are almost forced into functional freeze, where you do everything that's required. You have emails to reply to, you've got a job to go to, whatever it is, and you just push through, but you haven't actually, for lack of a better word, healed or been
mhm,
able to get out of that functional freeze and go from existing to living again. Um,
mhm,
what takes me to the last phase. So you've got wound, scar, and then the last phase is mend. And
mhm,
mend is where you'll never, you never get over necessarily what's happened. Like, I can't get my sister, my brother, my father back. I can't,
mhm,
help, um, you know, when I had a stroke or I had a motorbike accident, those things happen. I can't undo those things. But what I can do is try and reframe them into meaning something different, so that I can use what I learnt during those times to help me build a better life or build a better version of me, or see it differently and cope better with it. Um, I think that, you know, um, there's a lady, I can't remember her name now for the life of me, um, but her son was the journalist who was beheaded by ISIS on
mhm.
live
Yeah,
TV.
live TV. Yeah.
Yeah, and she has now become, she spoke to the person who did it. She's become an advocate for, talking about it, and she's managed to, in many ways, although I'm sure she still grieves and misses her son, and she still has bad days where she's angry and all of those different emotions, but she's moved from functional freeze to sort of learning from it and using it. to help her. So that's sort of where I come from with all of
Hmm.
the different things that I've been through.
So the, tonight also is one of the few times I did not use a quote in association with the episode, other than your own words that I shared earlier. Uh, and this is a very humbling moment because I'm one of those who likes to say, I've been through some things, but I ain't been through some things. So I hear another person's story, have them share their story. Uh, and this I do know for a fact, though it has not happened yet, is that this episode, especially with the AI, I think creates some reels off what you just said. We have a lot of traction, we have a lot of impact in the weeks and months to come, especially in the audio format. Because with the audio format, I'm now reaching into places like Ireland. I'm already reaching into Turkey and other places because of another individual I have here who was a survivor of 9/11.
Wow.
Found it, he went and joined the naturalized American. If I had his actual phone number, we would probably be friends in different time zones. But he's sending me a customized T-shirt. He was in the first floor of one of the towers.
Wow.
He went and joined the military. And then after the military, his quote was, "I disappeared 10 years to find myself." And then he runs a nonprofit based in the States out of Turkey. And aside for help from him up to this point, you're the only other person I can recall in the last few months whose story just went, mm, because Labine, I know it's how I know it sounds, say his name now, Labine, uh, he grabbed my heart. I'm not a veteran, but he grabbed my heart.
Mm.
He's been on so many YouTube, so many shows. I'm not taking away from what you said. I'm simply tying it in with that your story, what you may have perceived as being a laundry list of negativity, has touched more people than you probably realize. Because a lot of people can relate to one aspect of that or another.
Absolutely.
Uh, the lady whom, which means I'm gonna probably ask you to come back. The other lady who hit in the top three, she founded a whole organization about renaming women. Like men have Sir and Mister. She came with a whole concept that she's pushing before the United States government. And her thought, and she had been through child loss, miscarriages. So her story, but you have been blessed to have some children. She has had claims others as her own.
Mm.
I go on back again to this gut wrenching aspect of storytelling. Uh, I'm glad I had you on the show, in spite of the technical difficulties, which I'm still working through, because I'm manually sending out to people. We're doing this through StreamYard, not Google Meet.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've got people booked all the way through January now. Uh, it's a powerful stories,
And I
and
think,
that's why I want to bring. That's why I want to bring you back after I have certain individuals up here, and I'm going to tie in some of their stories so you can speak life into their story. It's going to be one of the first times I've taken a podcast and overlinked outside of Labine. I share his stuff and other ladies' stuff. I actually donate to her organization, uh, where you're going to be one of these individuals whom I want to bring back. And after that person comes on, who recorded his son's last words,
mm,
and I listened to it about 30 seconds on YouTube, and it's basically, "Dad, I'm sick. I think I drank too much." And the
oh my
next
God.
morning he was dead of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
So after he comes on, I want to bring you back. Reason I say I want to bring you back because there's a connection here what goes back into survival mode in disguise. One of the things you mentioned. You've
Mm.
been through quite a bit. Let's dive briefly into what do you mean by that? Because I know what I think you mean by that, but what do you mean by that?
by how I deal with it.
Survival mode in disguise. What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that um, I think so. What I have always been very good at, and I think it's a result of growing up with the death of my brother and having a terminally ill child, I decided on my own as a young child that I was going to be the easy one. Excuse
Mm.
me.
Mhm.
That my parents already had enough to handle. And although they never ever made me feel like that, I decided for the benefit of my family that I would become easy, independent, not cause any problems.
Mhm.
Um, Ultimately, in a way, play small. And usually, when
Mhm.
people say play small, it has a negative connotation. It's like, oh, well,
Mhm.
I could be big, but I'm choosing to play small because, it's not safe. This
Right.
was not the same kind of definition. I was choosing to play small because I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to help people, and the way that I could help them was by taking up no more oxygen than
Mhm.
they could handle. And what that has done is, in my life as an adult, I do that now without even realizing it, in the sense that, you know, for example, I've got something happening at the moment, which is quite equally catastrophic as all the other things that I've listed. And I am the one that doesn't fall apart unless I'm alone in the shower,
Mhm.
or, people will still call me and say, oh, I'm really upset with my boss, or, my boyfriend's doing this. And I'll sit there and I'll give them all the advice in the world. And when they ask me how I'm going, I'll say, oh, well, yeah, I'm all right. Stuff's happening, but
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
else?
My word is I'm okay. I'm okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm
I'm
fine.
okay.
My phrase is, what are you going to do?
Mhm.
It is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. I
Yeah.
just have to
Yeah.
keep going.
Mhm.
Um, So I think that's how, there's many ways I think that we hide in plain sight. And it's by being agreeable, it's by being a people pleaser, it's by not ruffling feathers and playing small, and not prioritizing what you need, prioritizing what other people need, for the greater good. It's a very endearing quality to have, but it doesn't help you deal with what you've got going on. And I think that's one of the bigger issues. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sort
So
of
what's
thinking.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
keep going.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just had a thought in my head, which is a slight tangent on what you asked me, but it kind of lives in a similar space. Um, my One of my children was diagnosed with a personality disorder,
Mhm.
over and above the ASD diagnosis. And at the time when my husband and I were informed of this diagnosis, we had two very different reactions. Um,
Mm.
and, I know he won't mind me talking about this, but he essentially came apart. He got a whole body rash. He was having insomnia. Everything sort of, you know, externally and internally was kind of breaking down, which is perfectly understandable. Everyone has very different coping mechanisms. Um, but I dealt with it very differently. I wasn't in denial. I still cried in the shower. I still had my moments of, oh my God, what does this mean? And so on and
Mhm.
so forth. But, and this is where I talk about using what happened to you as building blocks for you. Um, is that I was able to look at this diagnosis and say to him, because he was quite upset with me, he was like, why are you okay? Like, how can you be okay when this is happening? And my response to him was, I didn't give it to our child. I didn't give this problem to our child, and I can't take this problem away from our child. I kind of think of it like leukemia. I didn't give it to them. I can't take it away, but I can help them manage it and I can support them through it. And that difference in perspective meant that I didn't spiral into the pain of what was happening. I didn't take it personally. I didn't think that I had any control over it whatsoever, which I think that is one of the reasons why people struggle, is because they don't have control over something bad that's happening. But I actually see it as almost a free pass. Okay, I don't have control over it happening. I only have control over how I respond to it. And if my response to it can help the situation in any way, shape, or form, then it's my job to manage my response. And so I'm very good at reframing situations so that my response is the best that it can be.
Yeah,
And therefore, it can help.
I'm more like your husband. Even with some things I'm not going to now, even with the disposition I came home with this evening, which and coming home with similar yesterday, but I handled yesterday in a better way than I did today. And so when you talked about your husband's response to those things, I'm realizing like this mouth of mine, which I'm like, now I got to go in there and do a positive podcast after all the stuff that came out after the disposition compared to yesterday. More calm, more level headed, more to, and then though I'm dealing with some things even as we speak now, because once I get to a certain stress level, whether it's real or intentional, unintentional, I have physical symptoms, or my physical symptoms, like at age of 62, I have arthritis, bummed up knee. Everything is exacerbated mentally. So it's like, so I can relate back to more of what you said about
Mm,
him.
yeah,
I'm not going to dwell on that though, because what you said about you is a place that not only myself, but others need to learn how to navigate through. So I'm glad you said it. Uh, Everybody's different, but there's nothing you said that some of us can't use in different
yeah.
moments.
And that's the thing I think as well, Alfred, is that, you mentioned it before when you were talking about other people's stories and like the vet and things like that.
Yeah.
And you said, I don't mean to dismiss my story because of this story. I think like the main things that I sort of take on board with all of this stuff is that no one has any idea what anyone else is going through. Like,
Mm-mm.
even if you've experienced the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, for example, when my sister died, um, I had a certain experience, but when my dad died, I had a completely different experience because it's a different scenario, it's a different relationship that you have. You're different when it happens because it's
Mm-hmm.
either your first or your seventh, it depends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important that everyone realizes not only that, they really have no understanding. Like, even me having this whole laundry list of stuff, I don't pertain to be an expert on any of those things. I
Mm-hmm.
don't pertain to think that I know how you're feeling or what you're going through. I absolutely don't, even if we had the exact same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my message is more the fact that out of every single thing that I've had, I got through all of them by using that one tool, which is being able to reframe what is happening into something else that gives it a better meaning for me to then cope with. And so
Mm-hmm.
my only message to people is not do it differently, or you're coping the wrong way, or you don't know what stress is until you've had 15 things. It's none of those things. My main message is, if you can, in my experience, if you can reframe what's happening to you, it helps you get through it in a better way than just functional freeze, which I do personally believe comes and bites you later if you
It does. It
keep
does.
going.
It does. It
Shows up
does.
in your body, shows up in your relationships, shows up in your work. Maybe you have a stroke, it shows up.
Yeah. It shows up. When my sister passed, first of all, I'm not sure exactly how many of us are out here. I know this is being streamlined. I know my biological dad. I don't know if he watches, pay attention to what I do or not, or any of my family members are still on that side of the bloodline. What I do know is that with our mother, the first two children he helped bring to life, that means that our mother passed.
Mm.
Uh, because of our background, which I talked about in my stories on my podcast and in person, trauma and everything, I wasn't allowed to see her buried by my sister.
Right. Okay.
I don't hide that. I don't hide that. Then several years later, and I still to this day don't know why all the circumstances surrounding her death. All I know is I'm not anything I'm saying, not speaking ill of the dead. My sister sole purpose, part of her sole purpose of life, was to make us pay for things we had no control of. Because
Yeah.
her and I both were kids when these things were happening to us. And our mother did the best she could, which I later found out at age 18.
Mm.
So I went to the forgiveness mode. I want to be over with you. So when
Yeah.
she passed, uh, versus years gone by, my sister carried out a different type of vendetta. So when she passed, just before my book split finished, so I made sure there's a poem in there about her, very short poem. But on her passing, she was able to reach out from the grave to throw one more dart.
Mm.
I received my youngest son was the one who called me because my sons have somehow managed to maintain some type of relationship with that side of the bloodline.
Mhm.
They're adults. I didn't question that's what they wanted to do. Great. That's their business. Me, my own sanity, my own well being, I did not. I received some phone call that Saturday night from her husband at the time, from her phone with a blocked number. Now, I had spoken with her several times earlier, and I had her correct number to call me and say, after I just found out from my son that she had passed within hours, what kind of brother are you? What kind of brother were you? Yeah. I never met the man face to face.
Mhm.
And then I called back the number and it was blocked when I called back. I saw the number, then he blocked it, so I knew it was her phone. Yeah, a friend of mine is watching us on Facebook. Actually, a person who knows my life story since I was a
Mhm.
kid, and he used to send me some good encouragement and message, Mr. James Ebron. He just popped up in the box, and I'm gonna go back to the story though. But he carries memories and stories of me as a kid, and I respect this man. Though I've not seen him since high school,
Right.
probably up before that. But either way, back to that story aspect of it, I could not attend my sister's funeral for my own personal peace. I could not. I consulted with my aunts. We didn't go because if I'm gonna receive a phone call. What's it gonna be like with me sitting there? Though I love
Mm.
my nieces, what would it look like me being there in a room that I know I'm gonna walk away more traumatized from?
Mm.
And so she basically left the earth the way she allowed our mother to leave the earth. A few people around, yada yada. But also in that, I forgave her. I forgave my biological father. I've been blessed to have a man who became like a father to me. Um, I've had some loss, not to the degree that you had your loss, but that loss hurts differently for each individual person.
Yep.
And to know that there are people like the man who's watching us now on Facebook are still out there, that my aunt in New York is still out there. To know that, like your case, you have your children, you have your husband. Our words make a difference. I know my words earlier didn't sound good when I came home, but on the other side of it, there's healing, there's forgiveness, there's patience.
Mm.
Because in this thing that you just talked about, I call it wearing the mask.
Mhm.
It's like when I'm out working, I'm the go-to guy. I'm conversationalizing with the people I work with. I'm networking. I'm sharing words. I'm getting crazy good tips on my um, new full time jobs. I'm technically retired from working for someone else, but that personality shifts in certain moments. I put that mask back on. I take the mask off in other situations. I say. So when you talked about that, I'm like, yeah, I'm more like her husband.
Yeah.
But that's
But the thing is, I think that the
but
mask in
acknowledging
my,
it takes away the power, though. I think too.
what was that? It takes
Acknowledging
away some of the power.
takes away some of the sting, some of the pain. Acknowledging
Well,
that you're a
yeah.
certain way.
I
Yeah.
think I think it serves having a mask serves multiple purposes. I think it enables you to put your trauma aside and function and stop thinking about it for a period of time to give
Hmm.
yourself a break. But I think what it also does for me anyway is it keeps me a safe distance from the people that I love that might be able to see that I'm hurting and I don't want to be vulnerable. And so because I don't want to live in my pain, I put this persona forward to keep a safe distance from people. Um, and I think that unfortunately, what you learn in a life of trauma is multiple things, depending on what your trauma is, but it can be hypervigilance, it can be playing small, but it can also be that you feel the need to protect yourself from life by going into this functional freeze. And ultimately, what it does, though, is it doesn't protect you because those things can still happen, you know.
Hmm.
And sometimes even you having that protection and playing that sort of mask can cause other types of trauma anyway. So you're not actually, you know what I mean? You think you're protecting yourself, you think you're helping yourself, but in actual fact, I think what we really need to do is be real and be vulnerable. And, you know, if you walked in and said to your partner, listen, I've had a really tough day and I've got only 10% left in the tank. I just need to go and have a shower and have a cry or whatever it is. And when I'm feeling like maybe I've got 12% or 20% or anything else more, then I'll come back down and, you know, be able to
See,
give you
that's
a
the
little bit more.
area that I really still, I don't mind saying it. I still struggle in that area because
Mm,
this what I do often, and the word I come to embrace is I often deflect from my pain, deflect from this, deflect from that.
mm,
Is that these are survival skills I have developed over the years, and even writing a poetry collection slash autobiography and having it in places I never thought my book would even be at. It was only part of the journey of getting to where I can acknowledge this. So being able to say that, especially as a man of color, there's several groups on Facebook I strongly encourage. I'm gonna throw this a shout out there. Uh, Black Men for Mental Health. There's several groups on Facebook, because we are sometimes the last ones, especially here in America, who take that deep dive. We're getting all sorts of hit traffic. I'm getting so much traffic on this Facebook Live with you tonight. This is crazy. Usually I get everything on replay on YouTube. It's like four, five, seven people have popped up on the other
oh,
side
good.
of Facebook. Uh, but it's relatable,
Yeah.
regardless of nationality, race. But I speak more to men of color because I know we have traditionally not been the ones to seek therapy, to share openly, and to be vulnerable, which I still will say I struggle with. I may carry it with me to the grave. The most transparent person is not always the most transparent person, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's why I bring other people like you on the show. Um, so y'all can be transparent, speak to people in the ways I can.
Look, and I think as well,
Uh, but
you mentioned,
I want to play off of something you were saying though, which goes back to that point number four that I highlighted out of your bio, um, shifting from performing to living
mm,
for high functioning human beings who look fine but feel fried. I think you wrote. Let's continue you were going in that direction. Let's continue in that direction. That shifting part you were talking about.
Yeah, look, I mean, you just said as well that, you know, you have these survival skills. And I think a lot of people who've had adversity and struggle and hardship, they learn, like I did as a child, you learn certain patterns and certain behaviors that get you through that moment. I think that the problem becomes that when that moment is over, we still keep those patterns and then they become limiting.
It's not funny, but it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they become limiting. And then we kind of, you know, we say, well, that's how I survived. It's how it got me through. And we kind of reinforce it, right? And then you get confirmation bias, which is, yes, I need that pattern and behavior to help me get through. And that's the only thing that helps me get through. So those survival um, tools that you've learned, they served you and served your purpose at a certain time in your life, but now they don't necessarily serve you. But the way that I look at it is that being able to reframe something, that is also a survival tool. And if
Mm,
you are able to practice reframing situations,
mhm,
then that will also become a survival tool. There's, you know, there's neurological proof. For example, if you think or do the same thing all the time, you create neurological pathways in your brain. And the more
mhm,
you do them, the bigger those neurological pathways get.
mhm,
And so, as soon as something happens, you immediately follow that exact same neurological pathway. And that's how you create habits, right? So, a habit
mhm,
is really a superhighway in your brain
mhm,
that gets you from A to B without you even thinking now because it's done
mhm,
it so many times.
mhm,
So, what I advocate for is if you can start practicing being able to reframe something,
mhm,
you will be able to, the more you practice it, the more that highway gets bigger. And if that highway can surpass the old highway with all the limiting survival strategies that you once had, playing small, functional freeze, deflecting, etc., then, you know, the next time something negative happens or you're struggling, your brain will automatically take you down the new superhighway.
mhm,
And that's the thing that has happened to me. I swear on my life this has happened. Now, as soon as something bad happens, I almost always go into that new superhighway and I think, okay, I hear you. I know what you're saying. I register what you're saying and I feel a certain way about it. But I also can recognize that, you know, A, B, and C, this isn't something I can control, or it is, or I need to be vulnerable, or whatever the
mhm,
reframe is for that moment. And that's the one thing that has gotten me through every single one of these situations. And, you know, I think as well, I did just want to say before, I think it's easy to look at somebody who has maybe had all of this stuff happen and it looks like it's over and they're talking from the other side, right? Oh, well, of course you can say that now, you know, 2020 hindsight vision.
mhm.
But, you know, I still have, you know, like I have Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid malfunction. I have an
I'm
MTHFR
sorry,
gene.
y'all. I'm kind of moving around a little bit because my knee is bothering me, but I'm good.
Yeah, so this is my point though, right? Life
Yeah,
is
yeah,
always, there's always something, there's always
yeah.
stresses, you know, whether it's ill health or whether it's job
Mhm,
stress or child stress or
mhm.
relationship, financial, whatever it is.
All right.
Life is never perfect. So I'm not talking about all of this stuff from the sides of having done it and it's in my past. And so now I'm telling everyone, oh, this is how you should do it. I'm still in a lot of it, but I am able to deal with it because I've created that reframing superhighway
Mhm,
around, you know, all of the things that have happened to me.
mhm.
So that's how
So,
I think you go from pain to power. I think that's how you stop performing, is trying to catch your thinking and realizing, okay, this thought pattern or this behavior of deflecting or playing small or whatever it is not actually really serving me. I think it is. I think it's protecting me, but it's not really helping. How can I flip it on its lid and see this in a different way that might actually help me, you know, process it or move
mhm,
forward or behave in a different pattern?
mm. Very good point. I think with that point, though, I'm going to wrap this up and just give this word out there, and I'm going to let you close it out with your final thoughts. As with any other episode, I strongly suggest people, my friends, my family, my followers, subscribe to the YouTube channel for up, and you will see new guests coming on a regular basis. Follow the podcast, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts at. Um, Reach out to Amanda. I believe I have a link to her organization in the thing. I'm making sure. I do. I do. Her website is there. Reach out to her by means of her website. The link is there. The link will be active in the audio format as well as the YouTube format. Uh, because this thing called life is real, y'all. I mean, she said a lot. I'm not going to try to repeat what she said. Uh, I just know I needed it considering the states of mind I shifted in. I needed it. Saying it and teaching it, as I tell people often, I can say a lot of stuff, but living it through the lens of someone else is a different story. It's hard to do sometimes. They're living it, looking at it. So that being said, Amanda, your final thoughts, and then I'm gonna take us off camera. We have a conversation off camera as this closes out, and see what we can do about getting you back on in 2026.
Yeah,
Because
awesome.
the foundation has been laid. Now we don't have to go as deep. We can be like, this is part two, y'all. And what's changed in that sequence for both of us? And I can look at the comments and perhaps share some of the comments from people then too as
Yeah,
well.
brilliant.
So your final thoughts, Miss Amanda.
So, look, my final thoughts are there's a story about two wolves. There's a child, and he's talking about these two wolves. One is good, one is evil, and he says to his father, what do I do? Which one's going to be the one that wins this battle, the good or the evil wolf? And the father says, whichever one you feed it. And I think that ultimately what I'm trying to say is when you can change what something means to you, then you can change what it fuels. And so if you can build that superhighway of positive patterns, and I'm not saying be positive, I'm saying positive patterns, and limit the limiting belief patterns, then you can get through the stuff that you're going through. And if you feel like you can't, absolutely, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to, at least just talk and figure stuff out alongside you if that's what's needed.
Thank you again. I'm hitting the end button. I'll take us off camera. Uh,